I just watched all of Khamzat Chimaev's UFC fights, and I can't believe what I have forgotten since I watched them live. From him fighting twice in 10 days, the second time cutting to a lower weight class, him missing 3 fights with Leon Edwards, getting them canceled because of COVID, him almost fighting Nate Diaz, but since he missed weight by nearly 10 pounds, ended up fighting Kevin Holland. So much about him and so many things about his fights I had totally forgotten. So come along as I react to the entirety of Khamzat Chimaev's UFC career. Oh, he shot immediately under. He dodged a head kick. He's damaging him from the position where he rides him. He does this really well. Khamzat has one hook and he's just hitting him in the head repeatedly. You could argue to stop the fight based on this. Phillips looks completely out of this. Phillips tried to roll through for a leg lock, nothing. The matchmakers may not have known then. What a mismatch. Nothing against Phillips, he's a tough guy, but we're talking totally different levels of grappling here. The commentators are saying how he's had a crazy pace. He has had a consistent pace, but he's not gone so far to risk gassing. Khamzat doesn't look remotely gassed here, and he's bludgeoning Phillips right now. At the very least, this is a 10-8 round. He's bleeding everywhere. Being Phillips' corner after watching that, absolutely brutal. Phillips must have been mentally broken here. Absolutely. Modelo. Khamzat shoots immediately, gets the double. Grappling difference even 5 years ago between Khamzat and his opponents was absurd. He's going to Darce him, taps him. Wow. Khamzat did not force that submission. Phillips got desperate, got to his knees, and shot in trying to escape, and for good reason. He was getting bludgeoned. Khamzat didn't force anything he didn't need to there. So Khamzat Chimaev darces John Phillips in the second round after like a minute, where Phillips exposes himself after getting bludgeoned and then gets darced. Khamzat, leading up to this fight with John Phillips, had finished everyone he had fought, going only to the second round twice, finishing them, but finishing everyone else in the first round dominantly, either by KO or submission. When this fight happened, John Phillips was plus 175, and Khamzat Chimaev was negative 245. Damn, that's not good. Phillips had 6 fights in the UFC, and he retired not long after this fight, only taking 1 more. His record was 1-5 in the UFC. It was game. He had a loss against Kevin Holland before this as well, which is fascinating. Things that kind of counter the narrative of what Khamzat Chimaev is today, and that people say he has a very bad gas tank, he doesn't know how to pace himself. People are saying that if DDP can survive the first round, he's all good. But no, I don't think that that's as clear. Maybe he still wins, sure. But what we're seeing in this fight is even 5 years ago, Khamzat Chimaev, completely calm under pressure. He knew he was ahead, and he just waited for Phillips to make a mistake, jumped on the Darce, and took home the win. I will give Phillips a C tier. He went 1-5 in the UFC during his time, so like not a great record. Actually, no, that's a D tier win. We're gonna put it in. Khamzat immediately throws a punch and shoots. He's picking up Rhys McKee and walking him over to the cage. He's got like a hook and a wrist ride, and he's just hitting him. The wrist ride actually kept Khamzat on top and avoided Rhys McKee almost rolling him through. Shows the power of a good wrist ride. Wow, he's brutalizing with ground and pound. Rhys is desperate just like Phillips was. He's giving up position to get out of things and just getting hit for it. Just brutal ground and pound. They should stop this. The ref is giving him brain damage. Incredible mount. The mount of Khamzat is unbelievably thick, solid, and tight. He's still wrist riding him with full back control, flattening him out, and he's going to ground and pound him again. They stopped it. Khamzat's calling for the Kamaru Usman fight already. That's incredible. I forgot this. This is the fight where Khamzat took the fight on 10 days' notice. Oh, this is crazy. The context going to the Rhys McKee fight is 10 days before he won his fight against John Phillips, and then on the UFC Fight Island thing when COVID was going on, he was offered another fight because he said he was ready to fight anyone because he took no damage. And the Rhys McKee fight was made, and it was at 170 pounds. So he cut weight again to a lower weight class and then still won dominantly, absolutely brutally, in a similar fashion to his first fight, in the same way in that he kept a consistent pace, controlled the fight, And then when his opponent was making mistakes, he got the win. Honestly, the ref should have stopped it much earlier. If these had been rounds that had gone to the judges, these would be 10-8 rounds. Absolutely dominant in all aspects. Took 0 damage in both fights. And his opponents had nothing for him. He threw a strike and jumped into the takedown and shot immediately. But the context of him coming in on short notice at a lower weight class, absolutely insane. He's got a really big frame. He looked particularly large. He's a pretty big guy even for middleweight. He's not a small middleweight, so kind of weird he was trying to go to welterweight. Rhys McKee, similarly, not great, but the quality of win, the way Khamzat beat him, I'll bump it up to C. I think it's C. He's a little bit better of a fighter, generally speaking, in my opinion. And the way Khamzat beat him was more impressive. Looked even more dominant. We got a long one, boys. Khamzat versus Gerald Meerschaert, and he is just stalking him. Damn. Second strike thrown in the fight, Khamzat knocks out Gerald Meerschaert. In his third strike thrown period in the standing portion of the UFC, Khamzat Chimaev gets a KO in his third fight. So he's averaging 1 strike per fight at this point. Crazy stat. Wow. This was the way to handle Meerschaert, in my opinion. I think we'd all agree. Meerschaert is a good opportunistic grappler, great subs. He would go on to sub many people, set records at middleweight with his grappling. But even then, I'm sure that if it had gone to the ground, that Meerschaert would have lost either by TKO or sub. But just smart brain moment, not being an idiot. You should strike with him if you're Khamzat Chimaev. And this is the first fight where he didn't immediately shoot upon striking. But the second strike insta-KO'd Meerschaert, who is a pretty good fighter, man. It's kind of crazy. The last 2 fights have been violently impressive. It's basic game planning. Strike with the grappler, grapple with the striker. But to execute it perfectly, this is the perfect execution of that game plan, is incredible. 3 strikes, 3 fights, 3 finishes. Come on. Not much to say. This fight, context to add, this is only 2 months later, back at middleweight, but 2 months later, he's fighting Meerschaert. So in 3 months, you could say, he's won 3 fights, taken 0 damage, thrown 3 strikes standing, and has 3 finishes. I know his career didn't end up going at this pace, because we're 5 years later, and now he has a title shot. If anything, he should have had title shots earlier. We'll get to part of why that happened. Khamzat Chimaev's career started off crazier than John Jones's did in the UFC. John Jones was fighting for a title rapidly within a handful of fights. Khamzat's road was even crazier. Dominant. Hot take, Gerald Meerschaert win, S tier. I said it. And you're like, why? Why? Meerschaert went on to be a consistently good fighter, above a journeyman in my opinion, but in that realm. Way better wins than all the other guys up to this point. And the way that Khamzat won is absurd. It's absurd. He hit him, the first punch he throws, he sends him to the nether realms. It's crazy. Absolutely absurd win. Deserves S tier, 100%. Khamzat again shoots immediately, but Lee stops the first attempt to get put down on the mat. But then Khamzat gets back control and then drops him. Impressive. This is the most physical anyone has been against Lee. Similar, ride him, ground and pound. Lee's doing really good about not flattening out and not exposing his neck too much so far. Lee's doing a lot better about getting more upright, but in that he exposed his back. As he bases up, Khamzat gets the rear naked choke. Incredible. He actually fights it correctly. Lee is fighting this as well as you can in this context. Khamzat adjusts. Lee gets out again. Oh, and he switches it to the other side. And he's against the cage. Incredible. Khamzat uses the cage really well there. Another short one, only 3 minutes and 36 seconds. So, wow, that's crazy. The context going into his fight here against Jingliang is that Khamzat, during COVID, got COVID and badly. He was hospitalized and even spoke of retiring. During this period, he was booked to fight future champion Leon Edwards 3 separate times. All of them fell through because of his issues with COVID. And as I said, he almost retired. But a little bit over a year from his last fight against Gerald Meerschaert, he ends up getting this fight against Jingliang, finishes him again in impressive fashion. Lee, the most physically impressive and physical fighter he's had, even though he still lost very easily. He still put up the best fight so far, and he did things with his physicality the other guys didn't. Like, they broke. Lee did not break mentally or physically. He got ground and pound into oblivion and then rear naked choked. And the real highlight there is Lee defended the rear naked choke very well relatively to what was going on. Things were bad, but his defense of the rear naked choke was good. But Khamzat's adjustment on the third attempt when they're against the cage and he goes for the figure four again, but on the other side, because Lee has attacked the choking hand again, is he turns Lee towards the cage, basically making his right arm useless for fighting the choke, and he's pushing him in, closing the distance so he has less mobility with his hands as he's being choked, right? Jingliang is being choked with no mobility to fight this final one. He's very gassed. He's tired. He's been bludgeoned. That adjustment is masterful. And we're talking fourth fight here. A lot of doubts coming after the COVID issues, rightfully so. Lung virus, really bad. So four fights, and he's only thrown 3 strikes standing still, taken 0 damage. Incredible. COVID did more damage to Khamzat Chimaev than anyone in his UFC career up to this point. That's crazy. It's crazy. Shout out Li Jingliang. Li Jingliang, I think similar caliber of fighter, like more athletic, but like similar caliber of fighter to Gerald Meerschaert, but wasn't as impressive, right? Like was not as ridiculous and crazy. So, but what I mentioned during the fight is how Khamzat adjusted in the way he finished that rear naked choke. And it might bump me up to an A tier. That's man fighting, like extremely high level. It's A or B, but I'm going to put Li Jingliang in A tier for now, purely because the way that Khamzat attempted to finish, the way he adjusted to the rear naked choke. This is the second longest fight in Khamzat's career, and he throws one punch and immediately shoots. Doesn't succeed with this takedown. So the second time someone has stuffed or defended any kind of takedown from Khamzat. The head position of Khamzat is excellent wrestling. Drags him across the mat, gets the points, you could say. He's got him down now. But Burns gets back up. Wow, wonderful roll from Burns. Great attempt. Ends up in the half guard butterfly. It's crazy that Burns was a former lightweight. Did fight for the title at welterweight. But the best grappler by far that Khamzat has faced. It's crazy that a welterweight and former lightweight is the hardest fight of Khamzat's career up to this point. There's more strikes in this one round than Khamzat's had in his entire career up to this point. Khamzat's got like a big tit-for-tat kind of attitude. Honestly, a bit risky, but he covers up well, considering we haven't seen much of his striking other than the flash KO. Burns has better general timing than Khamzat. Khamzat is not seeing some of these things. It's interesting that, I guess, against Gilbert, he wanted to go to the ground immediately instead of striking with him. I guess he sees the striking of Gilbert as a bigger issue than the grappling, at least initially going to the fight, right? Because he immediately was grappling and had some success, but Gilbert got back up, defended some of the takedowns. He saw the striking as more of an issue, and throughout this fight, we'll see Gilbert's striking is pretty good. Ooh, that jab. Holy crap. At 50 seconds in the first round, Gilbert Burns gets dropped by a jab. It kind of looks similar to the one that Kamaru Usman dropped him with. You got to have power to do that. It is interesting that it happened in 2 fights against 2 elite guys. Oh, he did a little jig at 27 seconds. That's hilarious. Clearly a 10-9 round for Khamzat. The jab is insane. Puts him on his ass. The grappling exchanges, Gilbert's done the best so far. He even threw up an armbar in the ground and pound. Hail Mary-ish move. But Khamzat's got a good leg kick. Gilbert tried to shoot on him. That was crazy. It was a good shot. I think he just gets reckless at this point in his career. He stayed in the pocket too long, got caught by Gilbert right there. I think what it is, he sometimes can't read how long to stay or when the other guy's going to do something. Feinting is a problem. So Gilbert shoots again, almost gets Darced. So Khamzat is not just going for subs to go for them. Khamzat jumps on things. It's almost Rotolo, if you know the Rotolo brothers. He jumps onto Darces when people make mistakes. And Gilbert shot a takedown. It was a little sloppy. He flattened out in the failure of the takedown and almost gets Darce, but he knows how to defend it. He rolls through. Ooh. I mean, they're just missing left and right at the end of this round. Oh, see there, Chimaev does get rocked at the end of round 2. He definitely got rocked. He landed a bomb on Gilbert. Did not get rocked, but then Gilbert landed on him and definitely rocked him. He stayed in the pocket far too long. He landed a really big bomb on Gilbert and then went back in while Gilbert was loading up. Big mistake. Also, at the end of the round, it's pretty clear if you want a decision win against Gilbert here, an easy path is just take him down. Or Khamzat specifically. This wouldn't be for everyone, but Khamzat's shown he's not going to submit him probably. Oh, he's checking his oil to stop the takedown. I love it. Gilbert's trying to take him down, but he's down to bang. He wants to knock out Gilbert. And he has him against the cage, and he's just kablamming him. Oh, kablam. He's staying in the pocket a lot more reasonably now. Burns is pretty roasted here. They're still throwing bangers, but Burns is not getting the better of it. He's losing basically every exchange. There's 2 minutes left. Following the second round, Khamzat, who did get hit with a pretty big shot and got rocked, but I thought clearly still won the second round, adjusts here and paces himself a lot better. Still got a little wild in the first minute and a half or so, maybe 2 minutes, but overall, he's paced himself really well in this round and been real selective and particular about what he's doing. Gilbert does land a two-piece right there that was pretty nasty. Oh, big bomb for Burns. Almost landed a second. He's spamming right hooks. Oh, there's a left hook. They're just throwing check hooks at each other. It's hilarious. They both missed hooks. Incredible. So the Burns fight for Khamzat is the one that a lot of people, talking heads, fans reference in that Khamzat gasses. And I think that's just patently false. Did he gas in this fight? Yes. But it's because he chose to fight recklessly. And we've seen he doesn't have to fight recklessly. And inside this fight, he made adjustments and chose many times not to fight recklessly. And when he did, those were the most dominant parts, you could say. Most controlled and clearly winning parts outside of him landing like big, violent strikes. But even in the striking, when he was measured and controlled and tried to control the center of the octagon and picked his shots really effectively and had his guard up well, those were the best moments of the fight for him. I think that's the issue with him fighting Burns, who's like a really explosive, smaller guy in the pocket, right? It's like Mike Tyson. He can kablam you with really short strikes. And he couldn't really read those situations well and got overzealous a handful of times. Even though Gilbert was able to defend better than the previous guys, he still physically manhandled Gilbert, who is a jiu-jitsu world champion. Now, again, former lightweight, which is crazy, but also a title challenger at welterweight. Like, Gilbert Burns is an excellent fighter, and he's very physical and an extremely good grappler. The best grappler he had faced to this point in his career, Khamzat had faced, is Gilbert Burns. And the getting dropped in the second round at the end of the second round was a mistake from the pocket awareness I mentioned. But generally speaking, pretty clear, easy dub for Khamzat in terms of scoring. It was a tough fight, very painful fight. They took a lot of damage. But in terms of scoring, was he basically in control the whole time? Yes, he controlled the vast majority of this fight. Shout out Gilbert Burns, the legend. But going into this next fight against Kevin Holland, we need some context. The reason this fight happened is because he was supposed to fight Nate Diaz at UFC 279, which, just so you know, would have been horrific. It would have been similar, if not worse, to the fights we saw earlier in Khamzat's career, in my opinion. He would have done physically horrible things, and I'm not trying to hate on Nate at all. He's a legend of the sport, etc. And he's bigger than a lot of lightweights, and he's not a particularly small welterweight in some capacities. He's very tall, and he has a big frame. Similar to Kevin Holland, who ends up being the opponent of Khamzat on this card. Whichever matchmaker chose to make Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz hates Nate Diaz. Let's be clear here. If you saw Benson Henderson versus Nate Diaz, then you know the physicality of someone like Khamzat, who's bigger, more physical, better wrestler, more athletic. Oh, it would have been horrific. It would have been absolutely horrific. I'm so glad that he missed weight. I think that Khamzat missed weight on purpose. I hope so, because he gave us a fight against someone who physically it makes sense. Again, nothing against Nate. Like that just would have been horrific. It would have been like the Rhys McKee fight or something. It's just Benson Henderson physically manhandled Nate Diaz, completely dominated him, and he's a significantly smaller man. But so glad that we did not see that fight. Unless you hate Nate Diaz, then you were sad. If you hate Nate Diaz, then you would have been sad. But thankfully, Khamzat missed weight, and we got the Kevin Holland fight. choke. Gilbert Burns, I mean, fight of the year level, fantastic. Honestly, the toughest fight of Khamzat's career, like 2-3 years into his fighting career, maybe pushing on 4 at that point. I'd have to go double check, but still very green. And the Burns fight's crazy. It's a legendary fight that has gone down in history. He immediately shoots on Kevin Holland. Crazy scramble to start this, and Kevin Holland survives. So again, we have someone surviving a takedown attempt. The tallest and biggest person that Khamzat has fought up to this point, by far. Crazy. Another rolling attempt from Holland. This time it doesn't work. And honestly, coolest scrambles so far of Khamzat's career because of Kevin Holland and his grappling. Kevin Holland has a very opportunistic, scrambly style for a guy of his size, which is really fun to see against someone like Khamzat. Positionally, he survives the first trip attempt, tries to go for roll. Looks like he hurts his neck, to be honest. Oh, he's sitting in on it. Oh, he almost sat in on the choke. He's got the Darce. From anyone who's using Nelsons on you, you got to be ready for a Darce or an Anaconda. They're just fucking with you. A guillotine, whatever. He's got it deep there. Rolls him over. Gets out. He adjusts. Kevin rolls through, but Khamzat somehow keeps the lock in and rolls him over. He's going to tap, I think. And he taps. Wow. Incredible. Kevin Holland's acting like his shoulder's injured. Incredible. So let's talk about the fight. Already discussed the context going with the shuffling of the fight. But in the fight, we see Khamzat shoot again immediately. Kevin does pretty decent considering he's not a wrestler. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Travis Luter, I believe. He's not a bad grappler by any means. He's a good grappler. More opportunistic than positional. Then Kevin has had issues giving up position to people who I think he is better than, in my opinion, or at least should be. But submission-wise, he's got really nasty subs, and he's really able to jump on them, and he's spicy with it. But positionally, he gets sauced on sometimes. And we saw it here against Chimaev, who's positionally extremely strong. While he does have good subs, he usually finds them in his opponent's mistakes, as I keep repeating. When someone gives him something, he takes it. He's not willing to give up position to get his subs. He's going to keep position and keep striking, keep doing damage while he's doing that. And usually, you have to threaten him with something to get him off of his game because he's dialed in positionally what he needs to do each time. Wrist, ride the leg, figure four the leg, break you back down, take away a post. He knows exactly the formula. He is an elite wrestler in MMA. He knows the game plan and he knows the physicality he needs to execute it. So you have to threaten an armbar. You have to threaten a choke. No one has threatened him really with anything. Gilbert threatened takedowns, right? That's about it. And scrambling is the first part, right? And Kevin did that. That's the first step in a really chaotic moment with Khamzat. But you can't just accept that. You have to get to a position where you can be offensive to put him on the defensive. Otherwise, he's going to murder you, as we saw here. And Holland got out of a few positions, but for the most part, got ragdolled. And then at the end, his neck got left out there in a much more technical way than the Phillips fight. He was being a little smarter. He did defend it a bit. But if a guy like Khamzat is putting a Nelson, any of them, the quarter, the half, get ready for an Anaconda, a Darce, a guillotine, arm him out. He's going to try and choke you. You know what I mean? He's going to go for it. It really speaks to the advantages of both being really physical and having a body type that has lanky arms, but not too lanky to where you're kind of weak. Khamzat has a build that is just long enough to maximize in both directions. He's very physically strong, but he's long enough to hit really complicated submissions like a Darce. It's magical. Like Kevin Holland, for example, he's so long that he might be able to throw up an armbar, a triangle, or a Darce really easily, but he can be physically overpowered by a lot of guys because he's so long. Khamzat's in a sweet spot, and you see it. Or no, you don't. You see it on display in all these positions. Is that he's got like best of both worlds for his weight class. He's very blessed to have that. But the context, I think the narratives coming around this fight is where we started getting people saying Khamzat wasn't as professional, and rightfully so. Going from canceled fights against Leon Edwards due to COVID, good reason, don't get me wrong, to this is, I see in the context why people were saying it, but this fight itself, yes, very unprofessional. He should not have done that. He should never be at 170 to begin with, but in my heart, in my mind, this was the best outcome for everyone, win or lose for Khamzat, but if you care about him winning, right, biased or not, this is the best outcome because having Khamzat fight Nate Diaz was horrific, negligent, manslaughter, awful, all straight to jail for whichever matchmaker did that. I'm going to find out who did that before the end of this video. I'm going to put their face somewhere. But awful matchmaking, horrible. Why would you do that? Kind of speaks to the durability and status and quality of a fighter like Gilbert Burns, especially in his age. He's much older than all of these guys. I think he's 40 now, or nearly 40. Gilbert Burns is a legend. I just want to give him his flowers. Gilbert Burns is a legend. Deserved. The Kevin Holland fight. The drama that went around this kind of amplifies this a little bit. It's not as fun or as exciting in the same way, ridiculous, either the Meerschaert or the Burns fight. But I think the context of how stupid everything was going up to that, and then how that fight went, I'm going to give it A tier. I'll give it A tier. I think bumps it up to A, but arguably. Khamzat trying to bump gloves, and Kamaru was having none of it. Shoots, he misses against someone you'd expect. And man, he's physically manhandling him here. He gets the trip. Usman gets back to his feet, but he's on the defense. He's taking out his bases. He's kicking out legs. Usman has never had the physicality of someone like Khamzat here. Usman was like a high-level freestyle guy in the U.S. trial circuit. He was not a bad wrestler. Khamzat got double hooks in the first round. This looks like one of the fights from earlier in his career. It's crazy. Totally dominant so far. Usman is up to his knees. But something to take note, when you base out in a turtle position, he'll post on the outside of your elbow to control it. And it allows you to keep your base, but it completely takes that arm out of the fight. And he can start fighting you with the other hand. It's really interesting. It's a form of hand fighting that people don't necessarily do that well in MMA, and I really like how he does that. He's now standing up, but he gives up the figure four body lock and a pretty locked in rear naked choke here. Oh, the fact that Usman does not get submitted here is crazy. Oh, the slam from Usman to escape because he knew that was locked in. At the end of the first round, Usman knew that was locked in. That could have been a finish. And he spiked Chimaev there, but he ends up giving a mount and then gives up the back again, and he's got the figure four while on the ground. We haven't had someone defend well enough up to this point to see how excellent Khamzat's hand fighting and wrist control is in these positions. We're looking at very elite hand fighting right now. And he had a double. He did the double outside wrist control. That's crazy. I've never done that. Dude, this isn't brutal. I think this should be a 10-8 round. I understand if he did 0 damage, I understand being like, oh, you have to do damage to get a 10-8 period. You have to do some damage, right? He completely outmaneuvered him, and he did plenty of damage. He landed dozens of strikes, big strikes. I don't think any serious person can say that that should be the same as just eking out a close round against someone with 10 more punches or a takedown or a bit more control or a little bit more damage. You dominate someone with back control for 4 minutes and 30 seconds and you do damage at all, that's a 10-8 round all day. And if you almost submit them once or twice, we're edging on 10-7. We're edging on it. Grappling is not respected in MMA, and it is not judged correctly, and I don't care what anyone says. Whatever. Usman knows how to... he defends kicks really well. He knows how to steer you really well so he can counter. So Khamzat's got to be winning this, but tight. Anything could happen. They're throwing, but nothing's landing at all. Something I've been saying. Khamzat knows how to pace himself. He knows how to be measured, and he doesn't just go crazy all the time. Now, again, only 2 fights ago, he went too crazy. But against Usman, he's very measured. He's in the pocket a reasonable amount of time. He's fighting smart. I think, if anything, he should be a little bit more aggressive right now. He should go for the takedown. He already got one and absolutely demolished Usman on the ground. This narrative that Khamzat just gasses. Ooh, great 1-2 from Usman, though. That could put the round in his favor. If we're being honest, I would call it a draw because I think anything that isn't absolutely clear is a draw. But I am crazy. We got a takedown from Khamzat. Beautiful double leg. Usman does have double overs. Defending it in a half guard position, it looks like. Actually, no, he's in side control with double overs. That's hilarious. This is an awful position to be in on bottom. Absolutely terrible. But he gets out. Only 10 seconds, but gets the takedown. I feel like this is more impressive than the 1-2 at the end. But it's close. If you're letting me score this how I would honestly score it, not with the current system, but how I think it should be scored, round 2 is a draw. Round 1 is 10-8. But I'd lean narrowly to Khamzat, but wouldn't be upset if you gave it to Usman. But like I said, any fight that can be scored either way, in my opinion, is a draw. That means no one did enough. But a few takedown attempts in round 3. Nothing happened. Nothing's happening in this round either. I think in fights like this, great overhand from Khamzat. That is winning the round in my opinion. In a fight like this where not a lot of damage is being scored, a big takedown should win you the fight, or the round at least, right? A big grappling exchange should easily be good enough. And Usman has an ugly high kick. They're both landing, but Khamzat is definitely winning all the exchanges to this point. Still winning them all. Usman's throwing a little bit more, but he's missing. He's showing a little more aggression, but he's missed every strike. He's throwing a shit ton, though. So I can see how a judge might think the aggression is worth it there, but he's clearly not landing. Khamzat should strike more. He's allowing cloudiness and uncertainty to creep into the judges' minds, when this should not be that way at all. He is shooting there. He shot again. He's up and on the single leg. Go for the double leg, and he's got it. Oh, and he's got the back. Usman looks a bit gassed. He's never looked particularly good on bottom. So now the damage has clearly moved into Khamzat's favor. He's landed several shots since they got to the ground. He's in dominant position. He's managing himself well. He's managing his energy. He's picking his shots. I think he can pass here. I think he can genuinely pass. He wants to arm triangle him. That's why he hasn't passed. As the fight goes, anyone trying to score this fight for Usman right now, ban them for the sport, unless something happens in the next minute. Looks like Khamzat's going to try and set up an armbar. Ooh, good scramble attempt from Usman. I think that Usman has to drop Khamzat to win this fight. That was a good fight. This fight was originally Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa, which that fight made a lot more sense. That fight made way more sense. Costa, I'm almost certain would have got finished. So hats off to Usman here. But he had a really bad staph infection. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was on his elbow. It was really bad. I remember seeing the photos. I'm not going to post the photo or share it right now. It's gross. You can find it if you want. And Usman stepped on short notice at 185, who looked not undersized at all. Neither of them looked undersized. This was supposed to be a title eliminator for both of them. They were both basically told, whoever wins this gets a title shot. We'll find out later. Maybe that's not so true. But I believe Usman was promised a lot of money to come in on short notice to save the card, and was offered a title shot if he won it, which honestly, for Usman, huge balls. I think Khamzat clearly beat Usman. I clearly think he won this fight. I think the fact that this was a majority is embarrassing. But I think this reinforces things I said at the beginning of this watch through of this video, is that I think Khamzat is way more measured than people think. And since then, in all the fights since, he's been measured, not made silly mistakes, been smart, dominated more. It's crazy how Burns was the toughest fight he'd had at that point. I think that Burns was a tougher fight than this fight, but he fought Usman better than he fought Burns. He did take more risks. He did gas in a little bit, but he was much more green. This was a couple years now. We're a couple years away from that. I think it's 2022 versus 2024, I think now. The Usman fight, fighting a former champion, short notice fight. I mean, Usman was the short notice fighter. I think that it's S tier. Like, it's not the most fun fight. It's not the most dominant fight. I mean, it's the highest quality opponent up to this point, statistically speaking. I think Usman is, I think this is B or A. I mean, if Usman is so high, it's hard for me to put it in B. I think it has to be A, but like the judging is so bad on this. The fact that this was a majority, whatever, like horrible judging. This is a clear win for Khamzat. Not the most fun fight. You could argue B here. So Khamzat feints a strike and then shoots the single leg, grabs the far ankle, classic good wrestling technique, and then he gets to the body lock position. Classy of Whittaker, he does not cheat to stay on his feet. He could have definitely grabbed the fence to cheat right there. I mean, Khamzat is wrestling in MMA with technique that is far beyond most people. He literally has him body locked, like it's a straight jacket. It's crazy work, right? The average guy in this position has been finished already. Robert Whittaker, legend of the sport, he's been really smart about using the cage to avoid getting put in the worst of the positions, but he's edging on it, man. He's edging on getting put there. He turned away to try and scramble. I respect that. That could have created an opportunity for him to get out. But Khamzat double underhook grabs him, like body, and stops it. Oh, Whittaker does it again and gets out. Damn, so he did the same move he did before then to roll through and got out. But Khamzat jumps back on top of him, grabs a wrist ride, and it's more of the same. Again, Whittaker he's conservatively defending himself, but he's defending it in an intelligent manner. He's doing, as I said, he's grabbing the elbows. Rolls through to get the back. Wow. That's crazy. Crazy. I think he's only had one strike landed on him in this fight. Oh, he's on this where he breaks the jaw because it's not a rear naked choke. It's a neck crank or jaw crank, if you will. Crazy. It was almost a year ago. That's crazy. It was like 10 months ago this fight happened. October of 2024. So he calls for the belt here. It was just a grappling masterclass. I mean, Robert Whittaker defended in a way that, like, when you're such a large grappling and physicality deficit, he did the right things and he took risks in intelligent ways to get out. But his wrestling was just purely not good enough and his defensive grappling was purely not good enough. But like I said, he does this roll through, like, to scramble to get out, and it fails the first time, but it works the second time. But Khamzat is so persistent and on him, stuck to him like glue, that he ends up getting the back again and a wrist right and gets to the back again, which leads to the finish. It's a masterclass. He shoots a low single, and then Rob, where do I put him? Where do I put Robert Whittaker on this list? Kind of weird because his fight looked closer to these fights, maybe a little. It's like Jingliang it's kind of hard. I might move Jingliang. Robert is like, do you put him at S because of how insane that was, or do you put him down here because it like? Nah. Okay, and I'll explain. Robert, obviously middleweight champ, so even more impressive in the context because we're talking about the middleweight weight class, right? And the way that Khamzat dominated him was absurd. One leg kick traded, and he gets taken down, and it's all downhill from there for Robert. I mean, as I said, he had the crazy scramble to get out of that choke, but Khamzat then taking that and having an even more insane recovery to the back again after that. It's absurd. S tier fight, I think, or S tier finish for him at the very least. These are the rankings. Kind of just reads as like the quality of fighters. I get it, but sorry. Yeah. Everyone knows it's coming and they can't stop it. Except Gilbert Burns and a little bit of Usman. But for the most part, it's just Gilbert Burns. It's crazy. It's the only fight where someone has consistently stopped him. Usman stopped him less. Usman was in more bad positions than Burns. That's crazy. The narratives about Khamzat gassing, reckless, not having cardio, but the data just does not point to these narratives being accurate. After watching Khamzat's entire UFC career, while I think it is extremely predictable, you know it can't stop it. I don't see a way out for DDP. He's very physically strong. He's very mentally tough. He doesn't give in, and he's not a bad grappler. He's not a bad wrestler. He's not a bad MMA fighter. He's the champion. He keeps proving me wrong, and maybe he'll prove me wrong again, but like, I absolutely do not see it. I don't see it. Unless Khamzat gets caught with a crazy strike, doing something stupid, or fights recklessly, I don't see a chance for DDP in this fight. Even if he fights as reckless as he did against Burns, I still would not pick DDP. Absolutely not. This isn't a picking video. This is just looking at someone's entire career and coming to a conclusion. I have now watched every single Khamzat Chimaev fight in the UFC, and it was crazy, dude. He's pretty good at fighting.